Good evening. Today is August the 1st, 2023. I'm Jacqueline Sustaita, President of the Weslaco ISD Board of Trustees. This board workshop is being conducted in compliance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. Notice of this training has been posted online for at least 72 hours. A recording of this training is being made and will be available to the public at a later date. The time is now 5:11 p.m. and I will call this board workshop to order. I'll now begin roll call. Trustee Rodriguez? Trustee Cuellar?
Present.
Trustee Castillo?
Present.
Trustee Trevino? Trustee Nieto?
Present.
Trustee De Los Santos?
Here.
A quorum is not required for board workshops. That takes us to item number 3, public comments. Do we have any?
There are none.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Martinez. That takes us to item number 4, presentation on financial advisors for proposed bond election on November 7, 2023. Dr. Rivera?
Yes, let me call on Estrada Hinojosa, our financial advisors.
Hello, good evening, Madam President, trustees, Dr. Rivera. Angel Magallanes with Estrada Hinojosa with me today, Dr. Miguel de los Santos. Great to be in front of you all again today. It's been a process. We've been discussing a lot of variables in a few meetings throughout the last few months. And finally, we've had answers from the legislature, from Governor Abbott signing bills, to what your tax rates will look like. So, and what your values are here in Weslaco ISD. Those were finalized. Certified values came in last week on the 25th. So today we do want to present you with a final product with the variables we have and what we feel comfortable the district could move forward with financially if they're looking for a bond, to call a bond for November of this year. So in front of you, you should have a presentation, and we've gone over this slide quite a bit. This is your current outstanding debt, currently at approximately $33 million, with the last maturity in 2038. And as you see, it does have some dips in the total debt service, and those are areas that we could fill with a new bond payment. There's some variables that we have discussed, and again, as we mentioned, taxable values, these are the certified values at $3.1 billion. That's what we'll be using for our analysis. Collection rate of about 95%, and looking at a projected state aid of about 30%. And the local share, that's the households and commercial and everything in between at 70%. If this election were to pass in November, we would be looking at selling these bonds next summer. We do have a cushion there with the current market rate at about 75 basis points for a total tax rate of about total interest rate about 4.6%. So what would this look like if a bond were to pass in November? And we're looking at $150 million to address the multiple needs that Weslaco ISD has. And as you know, as we know, districts are in much need of repairs throughout, and I'm sure your needs are much more than this. So this is probably a moderate number for what you actually need for the district. But if we start off with the left top corner, that chart with the tax rates, this is the same process that we've taken in the past. Looking at your overall tax rate, currently you're at 95 cents, 95.93. What we're proposing for a tax rate next year, or this year, 23-24, is a tax rate of 94.64. So that's actually a 1.29 cent decrease from what you had as a total tax rate. And what we're looking for the year 2025, if these bonds were to pass, we're looking for then an increase of 0.5 cent. So we're from 24 to 25, 0.5 cent increase. But you're already going down 1 penny and 29 cents. So in net, you're actually decreasing, but we have to show the growth from 24 to 25, and that's only 0.5 cent increase. So what does that 0.5 cent mean to the taxpayer? Well, one of the major items that passed or is projected to pass in November, and that Governor Abbott pushed along with all the legislators, is the homestead exemption for increasing from 40,000 to 100,000. They've already asked all the school districts to prepare their budgets, prepare all their financials as if a $100,000 homestead exemption is in place. So this rate that we have there calculated already has that variable of a $100,000 homestead exemption in it. So
Does it include the proposed compression? Do we have those numbers yet?
So that tax rate also has the proposed compression on there. If you look on the M&O side, on the left-hand side, down, you're going from 92 cents in M&O to 73.14 due to the compression. What we're doing there is then the INS is increasing to satisfy debt service payments of approximately, you need about 7.5 cents. We'll be using the extra pennies on that INS side for 2024 of $13.99 that will levy about $4.3 million to pay some debt early that you currently have. So for that, we will need a defeasance resolution. For that, we would ask for bond counsel to draft the resolution, asking the board to approve that resolution to have that tax rate at $21.50 for INS in order to pay some debt early. That would have some interest savings and also assist with the capacity of this bond.
How many pennies are we asking of the taxpayer?
This is going to be, the total tax rate is half a penny increase.
No.
No.
From compression.
From compression is approximately 14, from compression. Let me do
Because you have the legislature saying we're giving you property tax relief, so.
about 13.8.
Angel, for the people who are watching and are not financially savvy with this vocabulary, what exactly does compression mean?
So compression, you have two buckets in your tax rate. You have your M&O, which is your total, what you budget on. And this is what you collect from your taxpayers to pay your salaries, to pay for electricity, to pay for all your maintenance and operations. So that's M&O. And so in that bucket, on the M&O, what has been occurring for the last 4 years, the state legislature has reduced the tax rate in that bucket. Does not mean that the district gets less funds. What it means is the state is putting in more of their funds. So, for example, let's start off with $1. They said, hey, we're compressing you down to 70 cents. Well, am I losing 30 cents in funding? No, the state is saying now, we're going to give you that extra 30 cents in funding for you to be whole for your maintenance and operations side.
And I think one of the main things, too, when you're discussing that, is that you're breaking it down for the properly, but they're probably saying, okay, then, well, why go out for a bond? And the reason is because that funding that's coming in is for just operations. The campus, the campus upkeep and maintenance belongs to the community. It belongs to the owners of those buildings. So the state is going to compress, and they're lowering down the operations, and they're taking over to saying, okay, you know what? Don't charge them so much. Drop their rates. We're going to take over and fill in the gap. But that doesn't take care of what our maintenance is, our roofs and our AC systems. And that's why we're just doing the shift, because one of the main things that we hear from taxpayers out in the community is, well, tax rates. They don't want their tax rates to go up. And currently, Weslaco has one of the lowest tax rates in the valley compared to any other district. Back in 2009 to 17, they had an approved tax rate, I think, of $1.13. And then you're looking from 2018 to 19, it went to $1.16. And then you're going from 2019 to 2021, and it dropped down to a dollar almost, $1.01. And right now, we're currently at 95 cents. So we're one of the lowest. Yes. And so I think so when we're describing the M&O and INS, because, Mr. Stites is right, people have asked about it all the time. How does that work, or what does that mean? It's just the tax rate. The state's saying, hey, we're going to take over some taxes, but that's just for you to operate. It's not to keep up your buildings. That's our responsibility.
Yeah, and one of the things, unfortunately, as we discussed, is the state didn't include extra funding. So they're just filling the same bucket. It's just saying who has that share of that bucket. It's a little less on the local and more on the state, but that bucket is not getting bigger. It's not overflowing. The state said it's the same amount. We're just the compressions. The compressions really divide what's local and what state aid is going to be.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we need to do it, and it's also a good deal because the state pays a percentage of it, but I just want to be
Yep.
truthful.
Right, yeah, transparent.
Yeah.
As to how many pennies we're actually asking for. If we wouldn't have gone for a bond as to compared to if we do
Yeah.
request a bond.
Yeah, so that would be approximately $13.99, 14 cents, approximately. On your overall tax rate, it's half a cent. So what we're looking at here on your right-hand side is, again, with the homestead exemption, that's really where the bulk of the savings comes from for a taxpayer. Going from 40,000 to homestead exemption currently to 100,000 this year. It'll take into effect if the constitutional amendment passes in November, which more than likely it will. I mean, they're already banking on it. They're telling us to set our tax rates on that already. It passed with over 80% the last time. So that homestead exemption is going to be effective this year and moving forward. If you're a homeowner, make sure to get your homestead exemption and make sure you go to the appraisal district, make sure you have that filed. Because if you have a $100,000 value home, you're paying zero taxes.
Right.
Zero. If you have $100,000. Doesn't matter what the tax rate does. Doesn't matter if it goes up by 10 pennies or drops, you're paying zero if you have a $100,000 home. And then the breakdown's there. So the average taxable home is $168,000. So you're looking at a taxable value of about $68,000, which makes about $3.44 increase from the overall tax rate from last year to this year. So the overall tax rate won't increase from that 95.14. Actually, we feel very confident. This is a very conservative approach. There's still more compression going to come through. So that tax rate's still going to drop. It's in the law that year after year, the state will analyze how much it's grown, and then it will tell, by those calculations, it'll tell, okay, we've grown by 5%, so we could cover a little bit more of the payment for the school districts on the aid. So it'll tell the school district, hey, drop your tax rate by a penny or two. So years to come, we're still going to experience more compression. Your values that we have in here with our analysis is very conservative. Currently, at 3.1 billion, we've only projected for 5% growth in the following few years. You've been growing by 15% extra. So again, very conservative approach. We want to make sure that all the right pieces are in place, and at the end of the day, if these bonds pass, we don't want to exceed this tax rate. So very conservative. We feel confident that your overall tax rate will be below what's projected there.
Angel, I have a question. On the total tax rate from 2023 to 2025, you said it was a decrease in 2024 to 94, and then an increase again in 2025. Do we have, of course, everybody wants to decrease taxes, but do we have to decrease taxes, or can we just keep it the same and then decrease them, and then?
We could keep it the same. But I think this is it's not needed on the INS. So we feel comfortable with this approach on what's there.
Okay.
We're using what we need and not overtaxing as a district. So we're only taxing what is sufficient to pay off debt, to pay off some debt early, maintain the tax rate, and try to minimize that increase.
That's good. Everybody wants a decrease, of course.
Yeah.
It just seems like, okay, we're going to decrease, and then we're going to increase you again in 2024.
Slightly.
Okay.
But in the next slide, going to the...
Well, the slight increase, she's saying on 25, the slight increase, but that's when the bonds take effect.
Correct.
And it's half a cent.
Yeah, if they were to pass, and
If they
once we
pass.
sell, and depending on the variables at that time, when we actually sell in next summer, it might not be half a
Right.
cent. But on the next slide, I think this story, again, going back to the homestead exemption, this is a major piece of legislation that passed because this is where the savings really for the taxpayer comes in. If you look from left to right, in 2023, we have there 40,000 homestead exemption. Market value home, your average home here, market value is 168,000. After 40,000, it's 128,000. So on that tax rate of 95.93, taxes paid by a taxpayer here is 1,235. Now, this year, with a $100,000 exemption, that same market value home now is only has 68,000 in taxable, not 128. So with that tax rate of 94.64, the projected taxes for the school district doesn't include it because you get a summary of your bills. It's just for the school district. It's $651. So that's a reduction of $584 of taxes being paid for the Weslaco ISD. So now if you go to the next, on 2025, same homestead exemption, if the bonds were to pass, same market value, you're going to 95.14. So you're only doing an increase of approximately an increase in paying taxes of $3. So you still have a savings of $581 from what you paid last year. And as there's that disclaimer in the bottom, districts only set the tax rates, no control over the appraisal districts. Because as we hear, I mean, we see it, I'm a homeowner as well, and we see our values going up. And well, you know, we're paying more taxes. But as values go up, there is a cap. Your house value could go up, you know, $200,000, but they could only cap increase at 10%. So if your home were to dramatically increase and reach that 10% cap in this scenario, it'll go from $168,000 to $185,000. But due to the homestead exemption, you're only paying $85,000 on value. With that same tax rate of 95.14, you're still paying $420 less than what you were paying last year. So that homestead exemption is very valuable. And again, as we mentioned, the tax rate, we feel real comfortable, will not exceed 95.14 for the life of the bonds. So it will just potentially decrease as time goes by, with compressions go by. So that $420, that's a pretty accurate savings from now on.
So what I'm hearing, like to summarize it, you know, is that the bond moving forward and going through, people in our community are still going to pay much less than they did last year.
Correct.
In 24, 25, and then
Yeah,
forward.
even though the tax rate stays pretty similar, pretty flat, yes, the savings because of the homestead exemption is there.
So it's fair to say that we're leveraging what the legislature did this year in the legislative session on compression to give a property tax relief to the people, and on the homestead exemption to essentially get a loan from the state to better our buildings that are in need of upgrades.
Yeah.
And if we go to
To the least amount of cost to the taxpayer as well.
Yes.
And a 70% return.
And to summarize, to go to your point on what the state, because you are going to get some state aid for these bonds. And if you go to the next slide, how will we pay for these bonds? As we talked about, the tax rate, half a cent increase. So a total bond issue of $150 million, you're looking at your house owners, your homeowners, paying a portion of 33% or $49 million. All the other commercial properties and everything else is paying about 37% of this bond. And the state shares approximately 30% of this bond for $45 million. So if we were to break it down and look at a mortgage at a home at $150,000, and they told you, hey, you know, you could get this new home for $150,000, you only have to put out a mortgage of $49,000 and you're only going to be paying, you know, minimal payments, half a cent, and potentially nothing at the end of the day. This is something that everyone is putting their share. The state is, commercial properties are, and homeowners by a third. Again, homeowners are still getting property tax relief through the homestead exemption. They're getting state funding for $150 million to address the needs of the
And a
district.
prime interest rate on the market rate, right?
Correct.
As well, too.
Angel, for the average, the average price of each home, if they paid $651, let's say with the homestead exemption that just got with the 100,000, we're only asking, if the bonds get approved, $3 more a year.
Yes.
For them to pay.
Yeah,
So,
3.4.
you know, I paid $651 this year because everything that just happened. But if the bonds do pass, all we're asking, the average payer, is $3 more a year.
Correct.
That's great.
Yes.
I mean, when you break down everything, you look at all the different categories, I mean, it came at the perfect time. We have a lot of repairs that we have, AC systems, everything's reached its life expectancy.
Yeah.
And then now you have a situation where you have a great interest rate that you're possibly looking at. You're looking at hardly any increase in taxes. The district has a great plan that's been itemized and prioritized, it's ready to go. Yeah, I mean, yeah, this looks really, really good.
And then I think it's also important to note that by approving to go out for a bond election, the board's not approving a tax increase, it's asking the community to approve a tax increase.
That's correct.
So we're putting it out to the voters to decide whether they think this is worth it or not.
Correct. Yes, I mean, that's an important role of a board, that you and administration doing your due diligence, working together collaboratively,
Right.
coming up with a plan and presenting it to the community. And yeah, you are absolutely correct. It's going to be to the community to decide if they want to move forward or not. But at the end of the day, to summarize again, it's a win-win everywhere where the homeowner, again, getting property tax relief through the homestead exemption. It's going to be 0.5% or less at the end of the day, but right now we're projected 0.5% with what the numbers that we have.
Right.
And you're getting state assistance for it, for $150 million to address your needs.
The numbers look great. I mean, it's just the right time. I think if the community really understands, I think they'd be very happy also to see this. So now it's, like you said, our job to go out and
Yes.
inform and educate the community.
So just my last slide, I know your administration is going to present on the projects. As we discussed, we would work then with bond council to determine where the projects fit. By law, they have to be in certain propositions depending on what type of project it is. For example, if it's an auditorium, it has to be its own standalone project. But I believe most of them, the projects that have been discussed, are probably going to fit in one proposition for instruction. So it'll be a total 150 potentially in one proposition, depending on what's approved.
What's the deadline to call an election for May?
February, somewhere mid-February. I'm not sure the exact date.
So the deadline here that you have here on Monday, August 21st, that's for November.
That's for November, yes. Thank you. Any other questions?
Any other questions from anybody? Think we're good? Dr. Rivera?
Well, thank you. We'll
Thank
still
you,
be
sir.
here, hearing the whole presentation, and if anything pops up, please let us know.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all so
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that takes us over to item number 5, presentation on proposed needs for school bond propositions 1 and 2.
I'm gonna give you a hard copy. It's on your computer too, but just in case. And I'm gonna call Mr. Americo to make the presentation.
Yeah, I think I have it here.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Rivera. So, as you stated, I'm here to present on the needs that we've estimated aligned, or at least the cost aligned with the bond issue amount presented by Mr. Magallanes just a while ago.
Do our architects not want to be our architects?
I'm sorry?
Do our architects not want to be our architects? They're not here to help present on this?
We did invite him, Mr. Brian Godinez with ERO. We extended the invitation. At first, he said he was not going to be able to make it. He was out of town. And then he did confirm that he was going to be able to make it. So I'm not sure
Well, it's potentially $150 million worth of work.
if he was detained. Yes. So I couldn't answer that. But yeah, we did make contact with him, and we did talk to him several times, and we did email him as well. So maybe, I'm not sure exactly what happened, but he may have been detained. So again, this needs, we're estimating the cost aligns with the bond issue that was just presented of $150 million. And it's a list of needs that are district-wide. And we're looking at only the pressing needs, priority needs that we have. We did get input from all the principals, department heads, from the athletics department, from the fine arts, and also we also used the long-range facility master plan report that we received back in 2019 from ERO as well as a reference point. And so We did also reach out to contractors, to consultants, to suppliers of equipment and materials, and of course, as I mentioned, the report that we received in 2019 to try to get an estimate. And again, these are very rough numbers considering the market. And then if and when we do get this bond passed and we get started on the work, we're still looking at a couple of years out for the construction. So the numbers are going to fluctuate depending on where we're at that point.
But the numbers you have do include the 15% markup.
Yes, sir. So we did include a 15% markup on this cost. But like I said, there's no telling, the 50% could be less, could be more.
But at that time, we'll still end up going through the regular process and getting competitive bids and whatnot, and
We do have to comply with all the purchase and procurement laws and
Right.
requirements that we have to abide
the
by.
process that needs to take
Absolutely. Yes, sir. The ranking and so forth, and then having the board approved, going through the process of approval of method of construction and the architects or engineers, whatever the case may be, and also approving the ranking of the administration for any contractors or bids that come in.
We know there's a process. Given that everything falls into place, it's not going to happen overnight to get these things done. So have you prioritized what's going to be addressed first?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we're looking, and again, as the list right here shows, we've got the roofing and the HVAC that are
Right.
pressing needs, and so we're going to focus on that right from the get-go and try to get as much of that done as possible. Then we've got student restroom renovations also that are needed throughout the district. And again, so the needs are district-wide. It doesn't necessarily mean that every campus has been selected for renovation of restrooms, but there's quite a few in here. We're only looking at the ones that are in dire need of having this done. Safety and security, we've got the vestibules throughout the district that we need to get done. We recently got a grant for vestibules. The amount is quite small considering the construction need. It's about $400,000, just under $500,000. We have spoken to our architect approved by the board, and they did say, well, this is a very small amount for what you want to do, so we're going to try to stretch the dollars. So that's why we have this item on here, to make sure that we capture all the campuses that need the vestibules for safety and security. Fire alarm system upgrades throughout the district as well. We're in need of that. Access controls for the remaining campuses, which is primarily as far as student campuses are the high schools, where we need access controls. We've got them at the middle schools and at the elementaries right now. And then we've got some flooring, kitchen cafeteria improvements. KWES and Central Middle School are the campuses with the oldest cafeterias and kitchens. And so that's included in here. Some expansions or remodeling of kitchens also for Cleckler and Rico and the high school, the Weslaco High School. They've already outgrown that space. The ag farm remodeling, we're bringing it back, we're trying to make sure that we get that done. And then we've got drainage improvements throughout the district, expansion of the fine arts programs for middle schools, construction of dance halls and ensemble rooms and whatnot, additions for that. Canopies for the elementaries, drop-off and pickup, and for high schools as well. Parking lots paving, lighting upgrades for the aquatics, the performing arts building as well. Building envelope repairs on walls for Memorial Airport and North Bridge. Pavilion repairs, we've got renovation at South Palm Gardens, and renovations of the Weslaco High School, the main campus. Technology infrastructure, as Mr. Magallanes mentioned, we do have to refer to bond counsel for their advice on how this is going to be set up as far as the propositions. We've divided ourselves into two of them, and the second one being the athletic needs. And here we're looking at Sepulveda Gym, building envelope. We've got water intrusion into Sepulveda Gym, which is damaging the floor, and we need to address that. Field house remodeling for Central Middle School in KWES. Softball, baseball fields, turf, and tennis courts resurfacing at the high school. The same softball and baseball field turf for Weslaco East High School. Football field turf for Lackey Stadium, and then football field turf for Weslaco East High School as well. Running tracks for all middle schools, and sport field lighting upgrades for Weslaco East High School as well. We've got a breakdown on the next slide per campus of the need, just so that we get an idea of what each campus is getting under this proposed list. I'm not going to go through all of it, but you can see it there. And it's part of the technology piece. We've got the phone system upgrades and campus intercom system upgrades district-wide, and the security command center included in here. And again, as I mentioned, this is all going to be depending on bond council as to what does qualify from.
So I guess my question would be, and maybe it's for bond counsel, looking at this, and I see Proposition 2, and I just see athletics. You know, and I feel like a lot of people always say, well, the money goes to athletics, and of course, we love our athletics programs. But this might be a turnoff just to see for some people. My question was earlier, we can't just put this remodeling of athletics into Proposition 1, but I guess that would be something that bond counsel could answer, because the way I'm reading it here in the other information you guys gave us, it says construction, acquisition, or equipment of this, but this is just remodeling. So I'm wondering, is it the same, you know, does it go under that umbrella of
Correct, and you were right in
construction
saying that
acquisition?
we would have to refer to bond counsel, because some of these items may fall under instruction, so we're going to have to shift them over. So it just depends on how he advises
So that
us
would
to
be
break them
whoever
up.
does the bond
Right.
counsel, that would be their
If they have to be separated, or
recommendations.
they can go under one proposition, that would be up to
Okay.
them to let us know.
Yes, because I see technology infrastructure would be its own proposition,
Correct.
but yet I see it over here together with everything else. So
Correct,
It's a little
yes.
confusing, but I guess they can help us with that.
Yes, this is just a rough list of needs that we put together, and then we need to go to the next phase, which is bond counsel letting us or advising us how to put it together, finalizing, yes. This is the needs for the elementaries, the needs for the middle schools.
I had a question on the, when you were talking about built-in envelopes, are we talking complete envelope renovations, or are we talking just sections? Like in some of our campuses, I guess this is my focus is, when we started talking about the bond a while back, for me, it was all instruction. Okay, any building that has academic instruction going on in it, I felt we need to bring it, we need to renovate it, interior, exterior, renovate our classrooms, you know, bring them up to the, 21st century classrooms. And so that was kind of my question. When you were talking like a little bit more detail, I guess I would like to know, when you're talking about the envelope, because you said that there's, the way you stated is, I don't understand if it's the whole entire campus, or are you just going to do sections? What are you looking at as far as building envelopes?
So when it comes, and I'll use under the list, listed Proposition 2, Sepulveda Gymnasium, we need to look at the entire gym. So the building envelope is essentially the perimeter of the building that's keeping the elements, outside. And so any water intrusion and so forth, that includes the roof. In this case, we know we have issues with the walls as well.
Right.
So the expansion joints in the walls have already been compromised. And so we need to reseal that and make sure that it's assessed properly so that any rain doesn't run through the middle of those walls and into the
And I would assume that Weslaco High has issues with the exterior as well, too, with the exterior walls? Or
We
no?
don't have any
No?
at this point. So part of the envelope would be the roof, and that falls under roofing.
Okay.
To prevent
Right.
any water intrusion. So that's part of the building envelope, the roofing as well. In this case, we've got additional problems with the walls now.
Okay.
And so it's just a matter of sealing, not necessarily complete renovation, but just sealing the envelope back up, making sure that the water doesn't come in. So just to give you an example, the way we identified the problem there, we were walking the side, we turned off the lights, and we saw daylight coming in through the walls.
Right. No, and the
Yeah.
buildings, are
Yeah.
past the
Yes.
investment in the use, the reality of it is. That's why I was asking, as far as the exterior, are we gonna do patchwork, or are we actually going to fully renovate the exterior? Because that's kind of what I had the impression for, like Weslaco High, for instance. It has not had work done in decades.
Right.
And it's outdated and needs to be renovated completely. And
Right, no, so in this case, it wouldn't be called patchwork, it would be through an architect to make sure that it's sealed properly, and it's professional work that's done. I guess to use the word renovation, we're gonna renovate the seals of the building.
Okay.
Rather than the actual walls and so forth.
So I got a question. So like on this Proposition 1, for Weslaco High School, you have 29 million, but then when you break down the needs, you do have Weslaco East on here, but there's no number on Proposition 1. So I'm wondering if what we're planning to do with Weslaco High and Weslaco East is comparable. If we're planning to spend $30 million on Weslaco High, how much money are we planning to spend on Weslaco East?
So for Weslaco High School, we're looking at the main campus, which is, substantially, aged out already. The original campus from 1975 or
So
so.
what's the 29 million going to cover?
That's renovations of the main campus itself.
No, I know, you said that multiple times.
I know, but
what
what
is it?
detail?
Right, so again, I don't have the details, we have an amount, but we want to make sure that we cover as many things as possible.
And this is
So-
why, because the roofing is already built in, because I have the list of all the roofs. 'Cause
Right.
And thank you for the list, because you
Right.
provided me a list of all the roofs, the roofing systems. I wanted to verify how old are these roofing systems that we have, how old are our AC systems, and yes, they're all 20-plus years, so
Right.
they're past the life expectancy. And I know that the 5.5 million for Weslaco High is already built into the 28 million for the roofing. So the 29 million for Weslaco High renovations, I guess that's where we need to get a little bit more detail. And that's why I wanted to ask, and that's going to lead me to my next question. Will we have some type of website with details where people can go in and start going in depth? Like for those that want to go down that rabbit hole and see how far are we going to go with this money, well, we'll actually have really breakdowns and details on what we're doing.
Right.
Is that going to be available? Because
We can do that, absolutely. So again, and to better answer your question, Mr. Castillo, so we're not at the definition of scope phase yet.
Okay.
We're
But what are we
far
gonna,
removed
what are we
from
gonna
that.
tell the voters, though?
Right,
If we're asking them for 14 pennies, they're gonna be like, hey, $30 million, we're not at scope phase. I don't think that's gonna work.
Right, but again, so we're looking at renovating the entire campus, the main campus.
exterior as well, too. Interior, exterior?
Interior.
Interior only,
Interior,
okay.
yes.
So for
Interior.
sure, we'll take care of the roof AC systems, and then we'll have the interior done.
Yes, yeah.
And then we work on the exterior. Because like I said, put with the gym, I know, and I think they're in there as well too in the AC project, so, because they need that. Because I know that I've had some phone calls about that, and I've been in there myself, and I was amazed that it still looks, I didn't graduate that long ago, but it still looks the same from when I was in there. And it does, and we need to, our kids deserve that, and it's like I tell people too about this bond. When I walked through Weslaco High School, I know Dr. Rivera was there as principal when I was there, somebody made the investment for me. And so that's like I told people in the public, now it's our turn to make the investment for them. I said, so, and part of that, also our responsibility is just to be as fully detailed and transparent, because I want to know where the money's going just as much as they do. And I have a very clear, concise plan, kind of like what Mr. Trustee Castillo was alluding to, so.
Correct.
By the way, my frustration's not with you, it's with the architect
Right.
not being here.
Yes, we were waiting for him to show up. But
Yeah, well, yeah, as I mentioned, yeah, we did contact them several times.
he was supposed to, we asked.
A question on fine arts expansion. It's 8 million or 8.9 million. And I'm looking at the propositions, and it says here, if it's going to be something like a construction, acquisition of a auditorium. For example, right now we have the Susan M. Peterson, the PAC Center that we use a lot, which I think we've really outgrown, because when we were in there, it's packed for some of those events that we have. So something like that, is that included in this fine arts expansion, like a expansion of the fine arts auditorium, or what exactly is that?
No, so this is something that was identified on the report that we received from ERO back in 2019 as needs, and it primarily targets middle schools and a little bit of the high school programs.
Okay.
Weslaco High School, Weslaco East High
So
School.
in 2019, that was like four years ago, something like that?
Yes.
So we're still going off based off of those plans?
Yeah, well, so those are the needs that have been addressed, and they were identified back then, so we're using those needs.
And that's
as well.
just they're missing facilities, in other words. They don't have a band hall, or they don't have a wing to address those
Right, or
fine arts
expansion of
classes.
those programs, right.
Okay.
Facilities for them, right.
And that was part of the question, like I know that Trustee Castillo was bringing, is what Oracle, we asked for them to be here because we just wanted to go in a little bit more in depth. And I know one of the concerns is that I guess the needs assessment that was done a few years ago. And so we just want to make sure we don't miss anything and prioritize things in this bond, but
So to give you an idea of the needs identified per the report, we've got the middle schools, I have that slide up right now. We have a dance hall identified for Bigarza, dance studio and ensemble room for Cuellar, the same for Mary Hogue Central Middle School as well. So those are the needs that were identified.
Have you all sent that ERO report to us?
Yes, sir, we.
Okay. I don't know.
But we can do it again.
I
Is
don't
it-
think he was on the board when it was sent to us. It was sent to us prior to to him getting on the board.
We can
If I
send it
recall.
And is it ERO that we're working with, or we need to pick somebody, or we're just going with ERO?
Well,
or
they
what?
did.
We
they
already
were the
picked them?
ones-
No,
No,
they created the,
right.
Okay, because we're saying ERO, but I said, okay.
ERO did the evaluation, did the needs assessment, and did the priority list for us, but we still have to actually pick, you know.
Okay, because that's what I was confused. I said, we're saying ERO, but I don't think we've picked anybody yet. So it could have been anybody else, not just ERO, who could have shown up today too. Well, not anybody else, but
Well,
the list that we already had.
Not anybody else, but ERO is the one who made this list, 2019, the long-range
Okay,
plan.
then in 2019 that you mentioned.
Right.
correct,
So we're going based off of the ERO plan from 2019
Correct.
with all this.
right.
Identify plan.
So it is a long-range master plan that they drafted for us, and those needs were identified then. And so we're going off of those needs.
Okay.
For me, I would just like to have more answers, I guess. For instance, I'm looking here at the $5 million proposed for the vestibules and the safety enclosures. And I looked through all the campuses, there's 16 campuses and only 12 of them are needed. So are we gonna spend $416,000 for each enclosure at each campus?
So depending on the need, Mr. Trevino, for example, we have Weslaco High School, two main entrances. We'd have to build two of them at that campus for the main entrances
But-
only.
Okay, but even at that, I would imagine we're not gonna construct exterior walls. They're gonna be built within the interior walls that already exist there.
Correct.
So for me, I've done construction a long time ago, but these, for me, I don't like to see these numbers like this. I'm very frustrated seeing some of these numbers right now.
So the other factors that come into play here is construction of those rooms have to abide by codes,
No, I
fire codes and
understand.
whatnot. So if there's fire rating of any of the materials that have to be in there, the glass or whatever it is that we do, sprinkler systems requirements, the electrical that goes in there if we're gonna station somebody there, which we've been doing. So all of that, air conditioning, if we're gonna have that as well. So we're looking at all of that, that kind of adds up to the cost.
But I imagine at a lot of these places, it's gonna be, for instance, if we enclose this sit-down area, it would only be maybe, move the lighting a little bit, but it would only be setting a wall right here. It wouldn't be a complete build-over, a complete enclosure at a lot of these places. I see the number $416,000, the way it's factored in there, and I understand Weslaco East may have, it has two main entrances, I understand all that too. But I look at these numbers and this is what the architects worked on previously?
So, yeah, again, we're going off of previous costs that we have for materials, also from projects that we've done in-house. So it's just a guesstimate of what we're thinking would cost us. We don't have an exact, and we're not gonna have an exact number until we're actually there.
Right.
But again,
And
it's
that goes
just,
to my question, I was just about to ask you, you just mentioned it. So the bond gets approved by the community, all right? Let's just go through that scenario. The bond gets approved by the community, we go into the process, and yet, well, we like, in other words, the vestibules, we'll be able to leverage that amount of work to get better pricing, because when we go out for bids, it's not like we're gonna separate all 16 projects into 16 different construction companies, correct? We can bulk that into a package and see who can give us the best price for the amount of work. 'Cause that's how the way construction works. I do construction as well too, residential. And when I have multiple projects, if I go to a vendor for one project trying to buy materials, yeah, I'm gonna get a discount, but it's a lot better when I show up and I got 7 or more. And then you get a huge discount because you're doing bulk pricing. So we'll be able to do that as well?
That is correct.
Okay.
So let me just kind of do some tag-along items. So again, we're just picking on the vestibules, $5 million. And we're saying, and I'm just making up numbers here.
Right.
It's for 14 sites. We internally hopefully it'll be $5 million. I'm hoping it's going to be less.
Right.
And so if we do go out for bidding, we get pricing, and we come under budget, that is perfect. Those leftover monies will then be used for the other projects
Additional.
that was already put on the initial proposition that the bond council will help us with. And I'm going to make it up. Let's say the student restrooms come out to 11 million. In
Right.
other words, a little bit over. monies can be moved
Right.
to help provide additional funds for other projects that were originally approved. And so, again, these are all estimates.
Right.
The dollar amounts. We don't know what the future is going to hold when we finally go out for bids.
Right.
Whether it's the architect fees, the engineer fees, all the
The state of the economy.
permits, and we're hoping that the COVID pricing adjusts itself and that materials come in lower. Again, we don't even know what's going to happen 2 months from now, let alone 12 to 18 months in the future. So again, this is just a rough estimate. We're not saying that it's going to be 5 million for all the different vestibules. It's just a way to show like, okay, this is what the current market plus a 15%, that's what it's been averaging. And just like how you said, volume pricing is going to be a big deal. Because if I come and tell the company, you're going to do 14 of them,
Right.
again, I'm telling the world,
Right.
I need 14 vestibules.
Who can deliver in the
Who
best
could
level?
deliver at the best price?
Price, material, service.
And so a lot of that is timing. And again, this is just so that we could kind of come up with that $150 million roundabout area.
Right.
I have a,
So
I
those
have-
are just a little.
I have a question, and the architect just walked in, so that's good, but, so like, proposition to Sepulveda Gym, so back in 2018, when this was done, that was a need, but maybe today Weslaco East Gym needs updates. Like, I would like an updated assessment, that's
Right.
just me, speaking. And did you guys, and then when you got this, like, Weslaco High football turf, or Lackey Stadium football turf, you guys just replaced the turf, didn't you? Like recently?
Right, so we're anticipating, by the time this comes around, the life
When was the
of,
last time that you replaced the turf?
I want to say it was around 2016
No,
or
I
so.
thought it was more recent than that,
for
for Bobby Lackey
For
Stadium.
the Lucky Stadium, it's 2016 or 2017, I don't have the exact date, but I can get that for you.
Yeah.
Well, we're anticipating, the life of the turf is about 10 years, so we're anticipating, being right around that time by the time we initiate construction.
So this need for the Lackey football field turf was said we needed it in 2018? And we had just done it in 2017?
No, we did it.
No, so-
First time was 2008, and then 2019, I believe, second time.
So I think you did the turf update in response to this.
So one of the things,
A few years ago?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting to.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
and just to clarify, and I apologize if I didn't mention this, but again, so we put together and updated the report that we got from ERO back in 2019 with additional needs. And so not everything that's here is on their report, so that turf was not on their report. So
Can we go back and update this list and then have another meeting with more updated information?
Right.
I'm along with Ben. I would like to see updated information with our immediate needs right now.
Yeah, 'cause the needs change year to year. 2019 to now, it's
Right.
been some time.
And that's what
And we
we've
just
done.
want to make sure that we're going to ask our community to come up for this bond, that we don't miss anything. And we address, like, well, at least, I think me and the whole board, I think I can say this for everyone, they really want to make sure that we're covering everything we need to for our students as far as, their academic learning environment. Like the roofs, AC systems, exteriors, et cetera. It has to be safe, and
Yeah,
so-
and that's why we went out and polled and surveyed the principals, department heads, and so forth, to make sure that we get
So
all
I don't want
that
people
information.
distracted with football turf and stuff like that. That's not, for me. It's not. I'll openly say it. I love sports, but I love sports. I love athletics, but I love academics more. Right. I always tell people all the time, I'd rather have my son have a PhD than be an MVP. So I'm going to focus on this bond is that instructional environment first. Like that for me is priority, and that's why I'm along with Trustee Castillo. I'd like to see a new priority list and make sure we're not missing anything that involves the classroom.
Absolutely. Well, and again, the priority, this is not fixed, so a priority can be set,
But we need a little bit of direction, and that gentleman back there has already started, so.
I would also like Ben mentioned, something comparable or comparable with, if we're spending this much over here, I understand Weslaco High is a much older campus than Weslaco East.
Right.
But there's no need to allow Weslaco East to get to the point where Weslaco High is before we start doing any type of renovations. So I'm sure it does require some type of, it has its needs right now as well, because I think that's what got us to this point, not having any maintenance program, not having anything. So now we have all the roofs that need to be replaced. Now we have all the HVACs that need to be, because there was nothing in place. So I don't want to sit here and wait for another bond 10, 15, 20 years from now to address Weslaco. Oh, now it's Weslaco East's turn.
And I believe that's where Dr. Rivera comes in. I think
Yeah, and
Dr.
we do
Rivera
have
can
East
get an
High School
update.
included in the roofing and the
Right.
HVAC here
Yes.
as well, the
Right.
entire campus.
We can utilize the report, but then update any other facility needs or any other needs that Dr. Rivera can come up with so we can go forward and pass this bond so we can, like Mr. Trevino said, a lot of buildings, HVAC needs repair. We need to move them so we can go forward.
That was my point earlier when I talked about, prioritizing. And maybe I got ahead of myself, but having been there, at both campuses and working for the school district for a lot of years, when we start to fix things, we will take into consideration what disruptions may be a part of that. Because, any time that we're fixing things, you have to make allowances for restructuring the schedules and allow for distractions and things of that nature. So right now, I think when we talk about HVAC and roofs and things like that, like Mr. Los Santos says, we want to have the best environment conducive to learning for our students and, of course, staff. And that's what I refer to when we say, what are we going to prioritize? But having been a coach and everything, I also advocate for safer playing conditions because the safety of our children is also very important. Mm-hmm. So this is like Mr. Steiner said, a big umbrella, but where are we going to start first and then go from there? And I don't want to throw a lot at you, because I'm looking at everything here, and it's all important. Mm-hmm. But where are we going to start?
Right.
Yeah.
And again, the primary needs here are the roofing and the HVAC. And after that, the priority can be set by the board.
And I'd like to make kind of like an I statement, as we've been doing in most of our governance. I would like for, like Mr. Yento said, to have Dr. Rivera kind of go and update these needs, but hand in hand with Mr. Godinez from ERO, since he's already started to see what else needs fixing, so we could have a more kind of comprehensive plan that we could go sell to the community. Because we're going to have to go explain ourselves, hey, we're asking you for 14 cents, but for what? You know what I mean? And I still don't have a clear sense of that as a board member. And so I would like, that's a come I would like for this to be a little bit more specific and updated as well to our current needs.
And it being done in 2019, I was thinking back, COVID happened in 2020. We were reactive, of course, because we never expected a pandemic to hit. So this list was done in 2019. We tried what we could in 2020 and meet the needs of our students and our staff and the safety in 2020. Then 2022 came around and we had the Uvalde shooting, and everybody's wanting to have their kids safe at school, in the vestibules and the police department. So what I'm trying to say is, have we met all the needs because this is 2019, obviously these big events happened in 2020, 2022 that really affected the way our mindset is about schools. So I want to make sure that we can't anticipate, or we can't obviously foresee the future and what our future needs are going to be, but we can at least see historically what we've needed, right? So I just want to make sure that this list, I agree, my I statement, I agree too that we need to have an updated list, because things have happened after this list was done.
As a medical mentioned, we've been working on this for 3 or 4 months already with new needs that were not on that report. I just think we've done our work.
So do you feel we've met everything that's on here? We're covered with
No, that would take,
Like 300?
double.
Yes.
Double the
Yeah,
amount.
this is,
Well, priorities are on
Right.
here.
right,
Well,
so
the
we've
main thing is, like we
shortlisted.
said before, roofs and AC systems, that's like number one, right?
Right.
It's like I told everybody before in a meeting a long time ago, you don't remodel your kitchen when your roof's leaking, right? So roofs and ACs, but we just want to make sure that we take advantage of this. Like, when will the district have another surplus to renovate some of these buildings that need to be renovated, like these instructional buildings, you know, like your campuses? And that's why I'm saying this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity where you have everything fall into place, market percentage rates, the taxpayers or our community cares about education. They do. You can just see how involved they are. But they also are very conscious of the tax rate increases, right? Or the appraisal value going up and the taxes going up. In this situation, regardless of the compression, regardless of the 14 cents, you're not going to pay more than you're paying now, and you're going to get a great deal on a loan. You're only going to pay 70% back on a loan. And actually, you're even paying less because you're really on the hook for, I think, what was it, 33 or 38%, the actual residential taxpayer. Yeah, 37. So this is an opportunity that's very rare, and where you're not going to see an increase and be able to have $150 million to renovate your campuses and not worry about them for about 20 years. And so we just want to make sure that the list is accurate. And that was the, you know, I'm kind of on the same page, and maybe we do need to come back and bring in these individuals to take another look and see that the list needs to be modified or improved. But, I mean, it's like I said, it's on the board.
We can just certainly wait for
What
direction.
would be well, I guess, did we talk about it? What's the turnaround time to have them come in and do another needs assessment on our district? Is that a drawn-out process?
It's not enough time.
Not enough time
We have
by
to call-
November?
We have to call the election by August the 21st, which is 3 weeks.
And ideally, we would want to tag along on the regular board meeting, which is the 15th. So we technically have 2 weeks to.
And these numbers aren't set in stone. They can be moved here and there, just being
Right.
held accountable and transparent to the community. This is where the money is going to. These numbers aren't permanent right now.
Well, I don't agree that we don't have enough time. I mean, we don't have enough time for November, but we have enough time for May.
Would they be able to get a report done before May?
So let me take a step back. So
I don't want to
if-
recommend May.
Yeah.
That's not my recommendation.
No.
The board can decide.
Yeah.
I can't recommend May.
To go out for a review of the district, again, it has to go through the process. It's not something that we would just have something ready for the 15th. So that is going to take a longer time period. And so when you do that, it does then throw off the rest of the calendar.
Okay.
So,
I trust Dr. Rivera, and he knows where the money is needed. And like we said, it's not set in stone, so we can move here and there, but just still be accountable and transparent with the community about where it's going and where it's needed. As long as we get the 150, if we can possibly pass it,
Now,
the 150 million.
I have another question, just food for thought. You know, now that we're discussing this, Proposition 2, is that something that, because we're talking about some of these projects being later on down the line, right? That's what you discussed earlier. Some of these items that are listed here are items that are up-and-coming issues, potentially. By the time we get the bond, if it passes, and then by the time we go through all the process and actually get things moving, you're looking at 2025. So my question is, and this goes to Dr. Rivera, is seeing how we've kind of reconfigured the way the district is operating and the budget and whatnot, and would we be able to put the funding in Proposition 2 into Proposition 1 and then address those other needs in stages with surplus funding that we have? Or, go ahead.
so when I was talking with the financial advisors, when we talk about Proposition 1, Proposition 2, initially as we kind of, we're talking, we're saying, 1 being instruction, 2 being athletics. It will go back to bond counsel to
Right.
help us put, in other words, we're going to rearrange it
Right.
to what is the way the law says.
Right.
So, so you may have one that says instruction in my head, one for fine arts. Possibly these athletic ones may be then funneled.
So they're
in one of
separate votes, like when I'm a voter. I go in there, I'm gonna see Prop 1, Prop 2, and I can choose whether one or the other.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
just
That
wanna
was my
clarify
question
that.
earlier to bond council, but we
Yes.
haven't
Yeah.
picked bond council yet.
That is right.
Right.
So-
That's why I wanted to know
Okay.
too.
So they will go, but I guess the way to think of it, just for today's purpose, instructional athletics.
Okay.
But it'll go back, it'll get reshuffled into the proper way that the voters will say.
Right.
Then we could say, okay, that on the 15th, I guess the detail that says, okay, for roofing, who will get roofing? I know that's where a medical could show that, oh yeah, these are all the campuses. This is a rough about number that got us to the 28 million. This is the HVAC. These are all the campuses. This is the again, roundabout number for those places. And so when we talk about the renovations for high school, the 29 million, that's when he could then share, these are the major issues that are at Weslaco High. This is what we're hoping to accomplish with the 29 million. So in other words, when we say, oh, we didn't want to give you the long list, we wanted to try to summarize it. And so that was the purpose behind this. But I know, in other words, there was a list that got to the 29 million. There was a list for the roofing and all the other different
I would love to
projects.
see the long list.
No, and they do have it. They showed it to us prior to you getting on the board. Yeah, they do have it.
So I'm behind then, so I
Yeah.
just haven't seen it.
Yeah.
So I just see $29 million, and what's $29 million?
Yeah,
right?
and I think that's what,
And going back to what I proposed about priorities, had nothing to do with what you already invested into presenting where we have our needs. Mr. Godinez, a year or two or so ago, we agreed to having you guys come in and look at the overall situation that we have with our facilities, and you've been looking at things, so we already know what needs to be addressed, you know. And, you know, Dr. Rivera, I support your position on this.
I actually have some things to say about what you just said, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. It's a workshop. It's a workshop.
Since you
Yes.
gave your long-range facilities master plan, y'all have said it quite a bit, so I've just been, first off, Brian Godinez, a principal and partner at ER Architects, and we were the firm that you all hired and engaged to do your long-range facilities master plan and that we delivered to you in the fall of 2019. I do apologize for being late. We got held up in traffic. I was coming from the island. Something bad happened over there at the San Benito Harlingen area, and I just couldn't get here on time. I wanted to tell you that to update your 2019 plan is not as difficult as it sounds. We did a very thorough job of prioritizing all of your needs. We made a determination that your ultimate priorities at that time, and I'm gonna make the assumption that you haven't done a lot in your buildings since then. I know you've done some, but not a lot. But water intrusion, we always thought was the most important issue you with, and not just roofs, building systems, the building envelope, the way it drains, et cetera. All of that we thought was number one, is to deal with water intrusion. Number two was safety, security, and integrity. And that was what we thought was second priority. And then third, obvious instruction. We didn't really look much at athletics. And so, but we developed a very thorough prioritization setup for you all to be able to run a series of bond calls if you wanted to over 10 years with building envelopes, life cycle ending like HVAC systems and any other systems whose cycles, water intrusion security maybe being the first, and then sort of roll it out after that. We also created what was called a construction index. We looked at 40 of your facilities, some of your support facilities, administration, warehouse, transportation, et cetera, and we created a standard which is used in the industry 0 to 100. Anything above 60, 65, you may as well replace it because it's just too expensive to renovate. Fortunately, of the 40, about 70 were in that threshold of 60 plus. The rest were pretty low. They just needed some upgrade for instruction, better instruction, etc. Now, fast forward 5 years later, we have our ability to look at what wear and tear usage would be over 5 years. So it ups the scores up about 5 to 8% type of building. So now I reviewed this all last week, this meeting. So now you've got 8 buildings that are really now in that threshold of replacement, but highly unaffordable. For instance, your Kate facility, your Palms Garden High School, I think Horton, AEP. Right. Those are some buildings that were really in need of replacement 5 years ago. They're probably even more now, 5 years later. But now you've had some other buildings that have crept up on that facility index. And so to update prioritization, to update the facilities condition, to update your life systems and all that, it's not as complex because you've got a framework and you paid a lot of money for it. It just needs to be updated and can be updated with software and percentages and reprioritize what's important with life cycle. But we still think your number one priority is water intrusion. By statute, you have safety and security that you've got to do. And then you've got the instruction issues on some of the campuses need to be done.
Can you do it in 10 days?
It can be done pretty quick, but you've got a bigger issue that you're facing with, and that's cost. Back then, when we were cost estimating for you 5 years ago, some of your renovation costs were running at $300 a square foot. I don't think you're going to be able to touch anything when you start construction 24, 25 under $500 a square foot. Your 150 that you have right now is not going to go a far way in terms of instruction. And you have water intrusion, you have HVAC systems whose life cycles are ending, you have drainage issues and things like that and safety and security that need to be your priorities. So if you're going to look at expanding your amount and/or how you propose it, you may want to consider that safety and security be on its own proposition so that it passes and doesn't get folded into something else that may not get passed. Maybe your building systems could be a second proposition. Maybe your instruction could be a third proposition. And generally, athletics get killed. They're the ones that never, hardly ever get voted yes on.
Yeah.
And that's in and of itself on its own. And it might be 4 propositions that may be required to be able to roll out there. So maybe it may look like a 14 or 15 cent impact of $150, $160 million, but you've got at least these little smaller amounts that you know can possibly get passed that are of the utmost priority for you. That can be looked at and helped out working with your bond counsel and your new staff to be able to figure that out. But the cost is the big one. I mean, you're not going to look at construction for another year, year and a half. And we're already looking at over $400 a square foot for general construction on renovation and some replacements or additions. That's the one that's going to be the tough challenge that you all are going to be facing with, is how to deal with these rising costs. And we're out there. We just did 10 projects out there in the last 8 months for construction. We do not see construction stabilizing for another 2 or 3 years. And even if it stabilizes, it's going to stabilize at a much higher level than it is today. You're just still going to have our problem in this market. We are the highest construction market in the state of Texas right now in the Rio Grande Valley because of lack of labor. Subs are minimizing. Construction contractors don't want to bid on competitive seal proposals anymore in the public sector because the subs are so limited. They're fighting with each other and they're raising their prices up even higher. And it's just gotten to be really tough to build in the Rio Grande Valley right now. And we don't see that going away for quite a while. And then you got those long lead times, HVACs, electrical, et cetera, et cetera.
See, and that's just my concern. I feel like we're going off of information that's 5 years old. And I just want
You are.
I just want an updated one.
Yeah, but it could be done in 2 weeks, and it could be done pretty fast. You don't have to reinvent the entire needs assessment. I don't think we need to go back and look at your buildings. We can add percentages to wear and tear and usage and look and see what you all have done already in the last 5 years. But the cost estimates is what we're going to have to deal with. We suggest you work with your bond counsel and think about multiple propositions to be able to get some things passed that are really, really urgent. Don't forget water intrusion. That's a big deal it was 5 years ago, and it's still a big deal right now, is you got water intrusion issues in your buildings.
Thank you, sir.
That's about all I wanted to tell you all, unless you have any questions of me. I'm sorry, I don't want to be the bearer of bad
How
news
much
here.
would it cost for you to do a review and an update?
I don't know. I don't know.
Can I make a decision like that?
I
No,
can't.
I'm asking because I don't want you to come and say we have to bid it out if it's under $50,000.
Yeah.
That's why I'm
Yeah,
asking.
I can't honestly answer that. I don't think that's fair to staff for me to propose a number in terms of what they can do, what Dr. Rivera can do. I just know that we can complement and supplement whatever you and your bond counsel want to do. But it doesn't have to be a reinvention, do it all over again. That's my point. You've already got a good roadmap.
That's where Dr. Rivera can follow up with.
Bond counsel.
He can. He's got a good book to work with from
Yes.
there that he was given.
Okay.
I hope I was helpful.
Thank you. Very, very much.
So what I'm hearing is that it can be done in 2 weeks, and we can have a new list by the time August 15th.
Only because we have a regular board meeting that day, so we were hoping to have it for that board meeting.
We could-
Now,
we
do
could
have
call
the
special one.
21st.
Yeah.
It would just be having the board come back.
A special board meeting.
That's fine.
I'm okay with that.
As long as we have it.
You guys are okay with that?
As long as we have four.
Okay, so then maybe we can do that. have a new list in 2 weeks, hopefully, possibly, and then have a special board meeting to go over the list.
As long as we don't compromise the November.
That's what we want to,
The
we want to
vote
have in August.
for November.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's why I asked if you could do it in 10 days. That's the 11th.
But can't we still just approve the bond and then decide on the permanent numbers of where they go later?
I'm not sure is that.
I mean, we're
Those
not-
are all- well, I
we're not
guess that's
gonna
all
go into the
council,
community
that's,
Education yet. We just want to say, we're going to go for a bond.
That's council discussion, no? That's council and all that? Okay.
Okay, because I'm
Thank you.
asking, can we just say, okay, we want a bond? Because we're not going to go out and tell the community what it's for. We're going to wait for that list.
Well, no, we're gonna tell the community what it's for. But
not on
we're-
August
but we're just talking about an
21st, on
updated
the-
list.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
Yes,
saying.
so it can be specific as far as exactly where all the
I
money's
mean, how are we
going.
going to tell them?
Well, we know that we wanted the 150 million, right?
Correct.
Based on.
That's all I'm
Based on the
saying.
itemized list. But that's why we're asking for a new itemized list or just possibly.
Because
you know,
we know what we're going to do, the upgrades and everything we need. Now specifically, we can go over, we're not going to go over it that day is what I'm saying with the community.
We're gonna, there's a process that we said we're gonna go out and do workshops and town halls and discuss the projects and the plans by campuses and, yes?
With that information we already have.
Yes, that's what we have
we're
right
gonna
here.
present.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So we can just still do the call for the 150 million bond.
And it all depends how bond council is gonna recommend.
Right, bond
Remember?
council,
How they recommend to us is, go ahead.
So exactly where you're on track.
Okay.
So the presentation that our financial advisors, they said, these are the, and I'll make it up, 6 different propositions.
Correct.
We just need to get the 150 into those 6 slots.
Correct.
Now, that's where, that's the part that he needs to have
Right.
for that bond order.
Okay.
Right.
Now, if we say, and I'm totally making this up, I need both in instruction, but it's from one campus or one item, roofing and HVAC, and I need to move money between the two, that is okay because it's already in the same proposition.
Correct.
But if I'm going to go back to, if it's moving from instruction to technology, which is 2 different propositions, that might be a little bit harder.
Correct.
But is
But if
150
it's-
enough, just kind of based on what he told us?
Now I'm worried that it may, like if, again, this is why we're having this whole discussion.
It-
We knock off all the athletics, and I'm just totally making that up. Move that to proposition 1, which is in my head, instruction, it may be a moot point then, because it may be all in one proposition anyways. But again, that's what we needed to know, so that when August 15 comes around, we know exactly how to have the
And-
bond
and-
order
And
written up.
depending on how much it is, we'll have to prioritize, depending on what Dr. Rivera presented to us.
Yeah.
What is the priority, you
Yeah, like we
know,
wouldn't want to put money in South Palms if it's at the end of its life.
right, exactly.
or Horton
So we're just
AEP?
trying to keep it alive. I think that's
No,
probably the
I
better way of
understand.
thinking of it. Okay.
But that's what I'm saying, that was the whole point of asking them to come back and to discuss was because like he says, if you have some buildings already that aren't worth the investment, then
let it
we
die.
need to start looking for other alternatives and answers, right? And so, and especially like he said right now too, you have figures, but they're based off of of a report from 5 years ago, and right now you have the square footage in that arena in the mid to high 400s. So you can only imagine 2 years later with inflation and then who knows what other issues. So that was the only request. It wasn't an issue with the administration, it's just the issue with the timing of the report and the time that it was done compared to now.
Yeah.
So,
And that's why you had that 15% increase. Again, we don't know. We're hoping that it is at that 15. The numbers that we do have are also conservative. So the hope would be that we had put enough cushion in there for those issues that had occurred. Because we knew it was an old, and we call it old, it's only 2019. But we did add that cushion, and we knew that some of those dollars, what we've been getting currently priced, what those are. So,
It's pretty old. 2019 is old.
so,
all right, thank you.
yeah.
So, Jackie, would you give the direction to Dr. Rivera to follow up with ERO on the update?
Based on what I'm hearing from you guys, yes, I think that's what the rest of the board wants, is
Okay.
that the new list that updated by ERO.
But we want the information so we can make a decision for a November bond election.
Correct.
Right.
Okay. Is that good? Is that fine, Dr. Rivera?
That's good.
Okay.
Okay, then we'll do that. Any other comments, questions? All right. So that takes us to adjournment at 6:25 PM of the board workshop. And now we will move on. Does anybody need a break or anything before we move on?
Okay, move on.
We will move
It's
on.
just a selection.
Thank you very much to Estrada Hinojosa and the board workshop. We will go ahead and move over to our special board meeting. I'll start with number one, the call to order. Good evening, I'm Jacqueline Sustaita, President of the Weslaco ISD Board of Trustees. This special board meeting is being conducted in compliance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. Notice that this training has been posted, or this meeting has been posted online for at least 72 hours. A recording of this meeting is being made and will be available to the public at a later date, and it is on YouTube Live right now, I believe. The time is now 6:26 PM, and I will call this training to order. I'll now begin the roll call. Trustee Rodriguez? Trustee Cuellar? Trustee Castillo?
Present.
Trustee Trevino?
Present.
Trustee De Los Santos?
President.
Trustee Nieto?
Present.
A quorum is, actually, this is not, a quorum is required for a special board training, and we do have a quorum. Move on to item number 3, discussion and possible action for the Board of Trustees to select bond counsel for the proposed November 7, 2023 bond election.
You have names before you. You can make a selection of who you would prefer.
Do we have, can we ask for if anybody's here available tonight to present on their,
So we do have two of the firms representatives here with us. We do have Mr. Ricardo Perez from Perez Law Firm, and we also have Mr. Arnoldo Cantu from Cantu, Hardin, and Montoya, out of the three.
okay, thank you. I will go ahead and call them one by one. I have in front of me the Perez Law Firm. If we can have Ricardo Perez, please come on over.
Mr. Cantu, would you give the courtesy of stepping out so he could present? I mean, it's up to you. It's a public meeting, but
It's a public meeting, it's on
Yeah.
you. You can go outside and watch it on YouTube.
yeah, that's what I did.
Thank you for being here, Mr. Perez.
Good evening, Madam
Good
President,
evening.
Dr. Rivera, and trustees of the board. Again, my name is Ricardo Perez. I'm a local attorney. I am originally from Fart, Texas. I practice in McAllen. My office is in McAllen, Texas. Ever since I graduated college, most of my work, if not all my work, has been in the financial business. I started off working at a bank, and then I became a lawyer, and then I've dedicated probably about 75 to 80% of my practice to finance, municipal bond work. I represent numerous school districts down here in South Texas, cities, schools. My firm serves as bond counsel. Could just give you a few: Rio Grande City, CISD, La Jolla CISD, Edinburgh CISD, PSJ ISD, Valley View ISD, at Elsa, bunch of cities here. I also serve as bond counsel to South Texas College. I serve as bond counsel to Hidalgo County, Drainage District. We just passed a referendum. We called the bond election for $190 million for the Drainage District, which passed in May. This is what we do. We service cities, we service school districts, we help you guys with any questions that you have with bonds. We're local, our office is here, we're always available, we come to the districts, we're always available for calls and, to inform everybody of what needs to be done. Unfortunately for us, most of the time, we don't get too involved because schools obviously don't issue a lot of debt or refinance debt that often. More than anything, they're always in contact with your financial advisor because, they're the ones that kind of tell you how much money you need, and we just kind of come here at the end. But if you guys do go forward and you called your election, then what would happen is if you engage one of the firms, then that's kind of where we would kind of take over. And our job is basically, like they were saying, you compartmentalize different bonds, right? They've got to be school bonds, like for buildings, go in one proposition. Their proposition's got to be lettered A, B, C, D, and E. Then another one would be a natatorium. But anything that you put for school facilities instructionals goes in one proposition. And you can move all that money around in there. You just can't take from here to a natatorium. Natatoriums have to be by themselves, fine art facilities by themselves, stadiums by themselves. And the reason that the legislature did that a number of years ago is because the statute has a general language that allows you to issue debt under one umbrella. And then some districts would say $150 million, right? Then they go build an $80 million football field. And then they build a $30 million baseball field. And, they spend 80% of the money on stadiums and nothing on instructionals, right, on school districts. So that's why the legislatures now require that you have different propositions for different types of projects throughout the school. But in any event, like I said, my office is here. We're local. I practice municipal work, and that's basically, what we do. We also represent some cities in the capacity of general counsel. We also assist a lot of the cities here in the valley, especially the smaller cities. One of the other things that I do besides my bond practice is I am part of a bank. I am chairman of the board of Texas National Bank. And, we have a branch here in Weslaco. We have employees here from Weslaco. Our firm's from here. All our employees are from here. We live here in the valley. We commute here, and this is where we live. This is where our families live. I've probably been involved in over 300 bond transactions over the last 10 years in different capacities as bond counsel, as underwriters counsel, disclosure counsel. We do defeasance for debt that the schools have. We've done it all.
What was your last school district that you worked as a bond counsel for?
The last deal we did, well, we're doing some right now for Rio Grande City CISD. Okay. We're doing some maintenance tax notes and possible refunding. Well, let me look at my list. I have an updated list right here.
Just FYI, you do have a copy of the resume?
Yes.
Right.
Yes, we saw it.
All right, so we did some Sugarland ISD, Point Isabel ISD, Waco. Well, we served as underwriters counsel in the refunding bonds that y'all did in 2022.
Right.
Right. In that capacity, I didn't represent the school district. I represented the underwriting firm that underwrote your bonds.
Okay.
I've got a list here.
We have the list.
Okay.
Thank you.
Like I said, we're from here. We're from the community. We're always available. You call us, we're always available. We'll come to your district. I've worked with Mr. Castillo in a lot of districts before. Worked with Dr. De Los Santos in this outfit for the last 20 years. And
As bond counsel, have you been successful with the school districts that you've helped to pass the bond?
yes and no.
Like, what is your record?
Well, we failed one election at Couch ISD, when was it, 2 years ago? And then another one failed in Sugarland ISD. But
And the ones you passed?
see, and then we passed Santa Maria, and then we passed Rio Grande City, and passed the college, we passed the drainage district. But our role as a bond attorney, right, is not to promote the
Right.
It's a structure.
pass, right? We put the deal together, we put the information together, right? And make the election legal.
Okay.
And then we will help you, we'll help the district, because the district, what they can do is, the district can not promote the bond election. You can be promoted, but you can't advocate for it. You guys up there, maybe the school board can, right, on your own, but the superintendent and, your administration, You can't be out there saying, vote for the school, vote for the bond, do it for the kids, or advocate against it. Don't do it. Don't vote for it. You can't do any of that stuff.
We can't, as a board.
Yeah, we can.
As a board, you can.
can.
Employees of the
The
district.
employees, right? And then the school district cannot expend any of its resources to promote the bond. You can't use paper from the school. You can't use your webpage, anything. You can use it to promote facts, just facts, saying, okay,
Particular projects.
these are the projects, this is the tax rate, just you can promote facts to your community. And what we would do as bond council, we'll help you put all that stuff together so that you can, put it out, because people have to know what you're doing. The district just can't say on their paper, Weslaco Independent School District, vote for the bond, do it for the kids. You just put facts out there.
Correct.
Now, what I have seen is there's groups, right? Even within school boards where they want to promote the bond, so they want to pass the bond. And then they'll create a committee of concerned citizens from out the, from the district. And then they raise money and they promote them. They have a campaign and they promote the bond so it can pass. And I've seen the other way. Some people, they promote that it won't pass. But like Dr. De Los Santos and Angel were telling you, you get a lot of free money from the state. And a lot of times districts feel like they don't want to increase your tax rate, but you just increase very little and you get a lot. And then when you never do it, you never do it, but everybody else around you is doing it. The college is doing it. The county is doing it. They're affecting your same people that live here, right? But it's not helping your school.
Right.
So, you got to do your fair share also for the instructions.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
If y'all have any other questions, we're always here.
Thank you so much for coming and giving us some of your time up to come and present to us. Really appreciate it.
I did notice, I won't disclose any fees, they're in here. I appreciate you putting the free fees into your packet here.
And our fees are standard industry, they're normal.
Okay.
And one thing that I tell you is, we only get paid if we issue debt.
Right.
We've had bond elections that fail, we don't get paid. Only the transaction happens and do we get paid.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you so much once again. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. Okay. With that being said, we'll go ahead and call the next bond council, which is Cantu Hardin Montoya LLP. And we have here Arnoldo. Okay. Hello, Mr. Cantu.
How are you?
Welcome. Hi.
For the record, members of the Board of Trustees, Dr. Rivera, my name is Arnoldo Cantu. I am the managing partner and founder of Cantu Hardin Montoya LLP. A little bit about myself. I was born and raised here in the Rio Grande Valley. I'm a PSJA Wolverine graduate. After university at UT Austin, law school at Stanford Law School, came back and taught English. So I have a little bit of a perspective there. And on my hardest days as an attorney, I am still in awe at how hard it is to be a teacher. I started my career at Norton Rose Fulbright, which was one of the largest firms in Texas, and transferred to become a partner at Locke Lord before starting my firm. I specialize, me and a team of 5 other attorneys devote 100% of our time to bond counsel transactions across the state of Texas. We're one of the few law firms in Texas that in-house has a tax attorney. One of the most important things that you need to realize is that part of the benefit of the bonds that you issue is the fact that they're tax exempt. And because they're tax exempt, you pay less in interest charges, and investors are willing to accept a lower rate because they don't have to pay income taxes on that income. That's all governed by Section 103 of the Municipal Code. So as much as any bond attorney can tout their state law experience without federal tax expertise, you're missing part of the equation. So our tax attorney, Adam Hardin, currently serves as the chair and co-chair of the State and National American Bar Association Tax Council. So he's recognized as an industry leader in tax-exempt municipal financing. I think that's one thing that sets us apart. One of the other things that sets us apart is that we're a team. If you hired us as bond counsel, you wouldn't be hiring one attorney. We have structured our practice in a way that's a bit different from the other bond counsel firms that are usually 3,000, 5,000 lawyer national global practices. Our attorneys each have at least 10 years of experience in bond counsel transactions. We operate, I call it sort of a hub and spoke model versus a chain of command. We don't use paralegals to the extent that other firms do. We don't over leverage lesser experienced or, frankly, less expensive staff. Anytime you deal with us, you'll be dealing with a partner level attorney. And because we have basically cut out all the unnecessary overhead or the excess that comes with a large law firm, we're able to keep our costs among the lowest in the state. Now, as far as what I've seen today in this presentation, I think that each member here has a very good understanding of what's at stake and what's necessary for this bond counsel transaction. There's a litany of state laws and regulations regarding school districts that have come across as usually in response to something. I mean, I think a couple of years ago it was a water park being built with school district bonds, and so now you have to sort of isolate into different propositions. As I heard your discussion, I would think that from a practical perspective, a bond counsel would want to see that project priority list as soon as possible and parse out what among those projects can be included in one proposition for, you could call it the general proposition for academic purposes, and what needs to be parsed out into a separate proposition. For instance, the statute requires stadiums, athletic stadiums, to be in a separate proposition, but only if they have more than 1,000 seats.
What about remodeling of a stadium? Does that include it
Also, depending on how many seats it has, right? You'll also need a separate proposition for recreational facilities other than playgrounds or gymnasiums. So there's a lot more nuance in the statutes and the way the Attorney General interprets those that need to be reviewed by appropriate counsel with experience in that sort of thing. So every year, typically, we do about 30 bond elections. We're a relatively new firm, like I said. In my prior practices at Norton Rose Fulbright and Locke Lord, I was probably doing probably about 100 to 150 bond counsel transactions per year. We typically managed 30 to 45 bond elections per year as well. Currently, we have about 15 bond elections for this upcoming cycle. I think the most recent bond counsel bond election that I've done was with the Santa Rosa ISD school district. And that's sort of an illustrative point, if you don't mind me sort of tagging along there. Santa Rosa ISD needed to pass a $7.5 million bond in May of 2022. And that proposition failed by one vote. And that was gut-wrenching, And so I worked with the district there, and I, aside from the legal aspect of a bond counsel representation, which is important, that's the minimum, right? I consider myself a local. We office in San Antonio. I have plans to open an office here in the Rio Grande Valley soon, but where you're located has nothing to do with how responsive you are. And if you don't pick up the phone, if you don't answer emails, then you could be here or you could be in Zanzibar. So after the Santa Rosa ISD bond failed by one vote, we worked closely with the district to create more of a messaging campaign, right? Town halls, newsletters, to understand and bring stakeholders in the community who initially were very opposed. I think that one of the primary concerns that they had was that they were in the dark about this. So the next time around, we brought them in, and we made sure that we presented factual evidence and explained the needs of the district. And it ended up passing. As far as that messaging is concerned, again, there is some nuance there. This is another area, the regulations, Texas Ethics Commission, that sort of govern what can and can't be said. You may remember, I think it was a while ago, McAllen ISD, I think it was a $150 million bond election. And at that time, there was a big to-do about, it ended up in the courts, actually, seeking an injunction, all because of a check mark in the middle of the O in the word vote, right? And so there's actually precedent for that. If you review the Texas Ethics Commission's opinions on whether or not that's considered advocacy, something like that can easily pass by. So with all our clients, what we do, any communication that is going out to the public, we review it, right? And again, the statutes will require that public resources not be expended for the promotion for or against a proposition. Now, there's some nuance there. School board members are not paid, right? You can advocate. You can have your signs on your front yard. The superintendent is salaried. So the more conservative approach there is to say, Dr. Rivera is on the clock 24/7, right? So for Dr. Rivera to come out and say, vote for this, would be a different matter than a school board member, right? So we prepare memos, we advise your administrative staff, and prepare advice and counsel both for board members and for staff in that area. For Santa Rosa, in fact, I made a presentation. We had a workshop over the sort of do's and don'ts of what can and cannot be said when getting the message across on a bond election, because that's one of the most important things, right? More than that, from the legal perspective, any bond that the school district issues is going to be reviewed by the Attorney General's office. It's just a fact of, that's the legal regime that we're in. The Attorney General's office will review all the election transaction documents, the proceedings, make sure that, everything is up to date. We'll have evidence from the Hidalgo County Elections Administrator who, Hidalgo County is a county-wide polling program. So your notices, they'll be in charge of putting that in every polling location in the county. We need affidavits from them. We need to provide them the notices. We need to make sure that you get your notices posted on your bulletin board in 3 public places by X date. So if any of those slip through the cracks, you can have a big problem down the line when it's actually time to issue a bond and get money. Problems in the bond election may not arise until after the bond election is passed. So that's one reason why you need a team of attorneys with experience who understand the area and who've done many bond elections in the past.
Do we have any questions from any board members or discussion or questions to ask? Mr. Cantu?
About the fees, I ain't see anything in here about fees. Is there standard fees or is there?
The industry standard, and again, this is it's something that we're hesitant to put because, the procurement statutes say that attorneys should be treated sort of like advisors and like architects and doctors. But our fees are standard. We would charge a flat fee for a bond election, and then the bond issuances are typically a small percentage of the total par amount, the principal amount of that bond issued. The standard there is fairly common across bond councils, and customarily we don't charge fees unless the bond is successful. And we don't we don't get cute, right? In cases where sometimes a bond fails to pass and we go back and do the work again, that first bond is not charged. We don't tack on fees or charge more for a second go. But again, this is it's a question about what you're getting for the money, right? And like I said, I think, I'm sort of the tip of the spear, right? I know this area. I have clients here, including City of Edinburgh, City of San Juan, City of La Jolla that are currently ongoing, Hidalgo ISD, maybe doing a bond election, as well as clients, we represent Austin ISD in their $2.4 billion bond election. That was also an issuance that we were doing while we were doing a $7.5 million Santa Rosa ISD. And I think if you talk to Marisa Cuevas there, she'll let you know that we don't treat any other district any better because it's more money for us than any other district. Every dollar that you issue is just as important to you and your taxpayers as, the Forney ISDs, the Judson ISDs, the Austin ISDs that we represent.
Okay, I think that's pretty much the same amount of time as we gave Mr. Bettis. So I think there are no further questions. Thank you so much for coming and presenting to us and answering our questions.
Of course. Thank you.
The next thing we'll have to do is go ahead and I'll take a motion actually, before I do that, there was another, they're not present, but we had Daniel M. Martinez with Winstead PC, who also submitted their qualifications. So I don't know if you guys have had time to look over this,
If they didn't make the,
but just to give them, that I looked over this also.
Yes,
We
that's
looked
fine.
over it.
In the package.
So we'll go ahead, with that being said, I'll go ahead and take a motion.
could I ask a question
Yes.
from the financial advisors? Is there a way to work with both of these firms? Maybe one is an underwriter and one is bond counsel?
Yes, underwriter counsel is typically selected by the senior underwriter, and that is something that is selected by them. We could have discussions with them on who they worked in the past, but typically we need the underwriter's counsel to be selected by the underwriter.
Who's the underwriter? Is it you? Who's the underwriter?
The first
The
presenter.
underwriters are not selected
First
until
presenter.
actual bonds are going to get sold.
Okay.
So the underwriters could be selected in May if the bond passes. The underwriters will be selected in May.
But
And
by
then,
who, I guess?
And it'll be, for an issuance this size, there'll probably be about 4 to 5 underwriters. And there'll be one that's quarterbacking the whole deal. And that quarterback will, to protect, because they got to look and protect themselves as underwriters. So they're-
Who selects the underwriters?
the board.
do.
Yeah, the board,
So-
administration. So it's something that we could provide recommendations as well. We'll let you know who's out there, who's worked as underwriters, who's been good in the market.
Did I ask the wrong question? Because
Yeah.
I thought, so there's a chance for us to select one of these two firms as the underwriter and the other one as a bond counsel? Or,
So I think the easier way to say it, there's 3 players when we do a bond.
Okay.
Financial advisor, bond counsel, and underwriter. We're not there yet for the underwriter.
No, I-
Just like how,
no, I see, yeah.
and so once we,
Get two underwriters.
if we pass the bond, the underwriters will come on board. Just like how Mr. Angel was saying, usually you have a head underwriter and possibly small
And who
supporting.
selects?
The
We will,
underwriter.
the
Well,
district.
Well, the underwriter will select their own underwriter counsel. So you're.
Right, but he's asking about the quarterback.
Yeah,
Let's just put it
who
simple.
selects the
Oh,
quarterback?
you do.
We do, the board.
The
yes.
district will select the underwriter. They will get their own
Are
counsel.
one of these two folks, could they be underwriters?
They've both done underwriter
The
counsel.
quarterbacking underwriter? Could one of
They
these-
both can.
Yeah, they both.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't ask my question correctly, but that was
Yeah.
my question.
So they'll work collaboratively with the underwriters.
Law firm?
Second.
Okay. I have a motion for Perez Law Firm by Mr. Trevino and a second by Mr. De Los Santos. Do I have any discussion, questions, or comments?
I just want to make that comment that I would really like for Mr. Cantu's firm to be very looked at for underwriter, because they both made the effort to come to our meeting, and I know they're both very reputable firms. So that was the basis of my original question. Whoever got the motion, I was gonna ask the same for the other.
Right.
Yes, both are very impressive, and they did a great job, so if we could work with both of them, that would be great. Okay, Any further questions, discussions, comments? We'll go ahead and take it to a vote. To approve Perez Law Firm as bond counsel. Trustee Cuellar.
Aye.
Trustee Castillo.
Aye.
Trustee Trevino.
Aye.
Trustee Nieto.
Aye.
Trustee De Los Santos.
Aye.
Motion passes. Which takes us to adjournment. It is 6:56 PM and we are adjourned. Have a good evening.